People that get to their boat with their electric car and step out from their electric car and go on their powerboat will not accept anymore in the future that they are forced to start two huge diesel engines and be full of this smoke in the cockpit.
Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome back to your podcast, the show where we seek to explore the world around us without leaving a trace. On today's show, we're starting a series on the energy transition within the marine transport sector. We'll explore how vessels of all sizes, from large commercial ships and ferries to personal yachts and powerboats, are upgrading to zero-emission options. While most of the marine industry is still trying to figure out how to switch to electric propulsion, today's guest is a pioneer in the field. His efforts to build solar-powered yachts goes all the way back to 2009. That's right, people. He was clean tech before clean tech was cool. But before we get there, I'm your host, Lisa Ann Pinkerton. I'm the founder of Technica Communications and the founder of Women in Clean Tech and Sustainability. And I have a question for you that I'd like you to answer for yourself. A little bit of flow diagram experience. Have you listened to more than 5 of our episodes? If yes, then ask yourself, have I left Earthlings 2.0 a review yet? If the answer is no, please take a moment to leave us a few stars. These reviews help the algorithm to notice us and bring more listeners to the show. So you're not only giving us feedback, but you're helping other people find us. And if you have left us a review, please ask yourself if you think the information on the show is worth $5 a month. Is it more valuable to you than a specialty coffee, of which I know you have bought more than one this month? If the answer is yes, we invite you to become a member of our Patreon and help support all of the talented people who help me with this show every week. And we will give you a shout out on the show and we will send you a t-shirt. So please join our community and support the show the way we support you. Now, for those of you who know me, you know I'm an avid boater. I grew up sailing with my dad on the lakes of Michigan. And in the past few years, my family has chartered motor yachts for various vacations, and we're learning to become captains of the open seas. We have spent a lot of time in the San Juan Islands. Now, I'm not going to go into all the reasons why we prefer motor yachts over sailboats, but I will tell you one thing I do not prefer: the fuel bill. Our last charter to the British Virgin Islands was an amazing week. It was beautiful. We went to, I think, 7 different islands in a week. It was very, very rewarding, and it was a good vacation. But what was not so rewarding was the whopping $986 that we paid to fill up the diesel tank before returning to the marina. That is just one example of how expensive boating can be. So that pain at the pump is why I think you're going to start seeing yachts transitioning to all electric rather swiftly. And there are several products on the market already. And today we are honored to have the pioneer of zero-emission yachting, Michael Köhler, on the show. He's the CEO of Silent Yachts. He and his wife, Heike, have traveled the oceans on conventional motorboats and sailboats for 40 years. And around the turn of the 21st century, they came to the conclusion that there had to be a better way to power these yachts. And that eureka moment occurred because Michael happened to be looking at his sailboat from a completely different perspective.
The key moment was actually on the island of Mayro in the Caribbean, part of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, a bit north of Grenada, a bit south of Martinique and St. Lucia. I was up on the mast exchanging a bulb, the anchor light, which was broken. And I saw the mainsail in the lacy bag with a zip. The zip was closed. Everything blue, nice, protected, closed and dry. The same with the jib was enrolled and also protected with a blue cover against the UV of the sun. Not working, because protected and out of use for the moment, because we are at anchor. At anchor, you do not use your sails. So we had a lot of equipment on the boat that was not in use for weeks, actually, because when you're there, you go for a few miles on just around the corner, next bay, and stay there for another week. And on the stern of the boat, we had solar panels and a wind generator also. The wind generator was working day and night, wonderful, but noisy. And the solar panel produces power every day, no matter if I'm standing in a marina, at anchor, if I'm sailing, even if the weather is not so fine, they're always producing power. And in the end, we really had to admit, would we be better by using solar panels and electric motors or the sail? We did it for more than a year. Actually, the result was clear after a few weeks, but we did it for quite some time, really a long list. Every day we made a note, okay, today definitely wind is the winner. With a sail, we would be much faster, or we are, because at that time it was a sailing boat still. We are much faster than we would be with electric propulsion and solar panels. But that's the thing. In most of the cases, solar panels in combination with electric motors give you way more power than the sail, because the sail can only be used to move the boat, but the sun is usually coming from above. And if you have your panels not like that, but like that, then you have perfect conditions and you can not only propel your boat, but most of all, you can cool down your beer and cook spaghetti.
Can you explain to us how your silent yachts are designed to harness the power of the sun? How do they work?
Very simple. The full roof is covered with solar panels. So when the sun is shining, they produce energy. They is being stored in batteries. That means we have a huge battery bank on the boats, depending on the type and model. We have about 300, 350 kilowatt hours right now on each boat, and powerful electric motors. The energy is being used to supply the drivetrain, the electric motors, but also any kind of other electrical equipment like the household appliances, fridge, freezer, air conditioning, oven, cooktop, everything, and also the tenders. That means we have a dinghy on board, or a jet ski, electric jet ski, of course, and this can be powered by the sun from our batteries with a normal charging system, like you know it maybe from your electric car.
So 350 kilowatt hours, is that what I heard you say?
Yes.
And that's the typical capacity of the solar array or the capacity of the battery bank?
That's the capacity of the battery bank in kilowatt hours. And the solar panels produce per day about, on our smallest model, about 100 kilowatt hours per day. On the biggest model, about 3 times the solar array than on the smallest model. And they are obviously then much quicker, but also the battery is much bigger.
How far could the middle-sized yacht that you have, I think that's a 64-foot yacht, is that correct?
62, 80 foot, and 120 feet.
Let's start with the 62 foot. About how far could that yacht travel on solar power alone?
About 100 miles per day, because during the night we use the power from the batteries. And during the daytime, we must not use too much, because while the sun is shining, we supply the drivetrain and recharge the batteries. So by doing it that way, we run very, very efficiently, and it's about up to 100 hours per day in good conditions without running a generator.
Okay.
So we can do 200 miles per day or more, but then for some time the generator is running.
Mm-hmm. And the generator is charging up the batteries. It's not providing energy for the propulsion system.
Correct. So it's not connected to the prop directly. It's connected to the batteries. Batteries will be recharged and then supply the electric motors.
Let's talk through a scenario. You're traveling during the day, the sun is shining, so you're able to generate power, and maybe you started off the day with a full battery bank. How fast or slow would you have to go, you think, to travel and recharge the batteries at the same time. Would you be able to do that?
Yes, but then the speed is below 4 knots or not more than 4 knots. Yeah. If we need to drive or cruise and recharge at the same time. And I think we are the only boat in the world that can do that, drive and recharge at the same time at such a speed. When I say boat, I mean comparable boat. Yeah, we are not talking about racing boats. We are talking about liveaboard boats with all amenities. There's a big difference. Typical use case that someone is driving day and night. There are only very few people that cross the Atlantic 5 times a year. The typical sailor is going from one bay to the next, is cruising for 2, 3, 4 hours, and that's it. And they want to go for swimming, or they stop by in a nice small village or in a marina, go for shopping, go out again. And that's actually the typical use case of a boat. It's not to drive 100, 200 miles per day every day. So our boats can do it, but in fact, we designed them because, of course, the power coming from the sun is limited. It's not unlimited.
I can see how the vast majority of the use cases would be these short hops, a day relaxing and recharge the batteries and then move again, perhaps. But you did mention that you could take this across the ocean. And I know that you have taken one of your yachts across the Atlantic and you only used a few liters of fuel. So can you please tell us that story?
Yeah, very simple. A client of us, and he and his captain and the guest made this transatlantic cruise. They had fairly bad weather. In really, really bad weather conditions, they used quite some fuel because there was no sun at all. For example, from Canary Islands to Cabo Verde. But then from Cabo Verde to the Caribbean, the transatlantic crossing, they used very little fuel because the weather was okay, it was favorable. They used very little fuel. Actually, in fact, they could have made it without any generator hours. The boat can do it, but then it would have taken a couple of days more.
Yeah, absolutely. So how does that work when you're traveling across the Atlantic? Were they underway for 24 hours at a time?
Yeah, actually, there are no McDonald's drive-in on the way. So you have no other choice. You go. If you stop, you can stop, of course, but it doesn't make any sense. You simply go day and night. Sometimes people reduce the speed during the night. On a sailing boat, especially, they do that. And on a solar boat, it does not really make sense. So you go with a constant speed day and night.
We haven't actually talked about the kite feature on the yacht. And I'm not sure if they use that feature on the transatlantic crossing, but tell us a bit about how the kite supports the yacht in propulsion to support the solar and the batteries.
So the kite was not available at that time. It was already 2018 during winter time, by the way. So not the best time for a solar boat. We have the kite available since I think 1.5 years now, and it works pretty well. You should not say how much more speed can I gain. This is not the goal. The goal is how much energy can I save. So our typical cruising speed is 6, 7, 8 knots. If we are cruising for a longer period of time, it's rather 6. If it's short term, it can be 8 or 10, 12, 15, 18. If you own a solar boat or silent yacht, then within very short period of time, you will understand that en route being cruising with such a boat is already holiday. So you don't need to hurry up to get there for the holiday to start. Because there are no noisy engines running and no vibrations, no fumes, no oil film on the water while cruising. The boat is also not heeling like this. It's simply straight, smooth sailing. You can cook while cruising. You can do everything while cruising. And so the people, after some time on our boat, they do not care about the speed. You hardly feel a difference between 8 knots or 6 knots or 5 knots. So sometimes they say, do we need to be there at 11? Let's slow down. We're not in a hurry. Yeah? That's the point. The mindset changes immediately because it's simply not as annoying as it can be on a motorboat, because on a motorboat, it can be cold. If you drive with 20 knots, 25 knots, even if it's hot weather during summer, 25 knots is cold after half an hour. For that reason, your mindset changes immediately when you're cruising on such a boat because there is no noise at all. Nothing. Yeah, you only hear a little bit the splash of the water, but that's it, not more. And that's why the people rather extend their cruise because the cruise is so nice.
I like that you said that because some people, yeah, people think, oh, how fast can I go, right? How quick can I get where I need to go? And it's not about that. And frankly, faster speeds are uncomfortable for the passengers,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
You can get seasick at a faster speed that you might not at a slower speed. At least that's what I've experienced myself.
And you can hardly walk on the boat if the boat is going fast. So if it's going with 6 knots, seven, eight, whatever, yeah, it does not matter at all. It's just when do I want to be there? And that's why I'm so proud of what we developed because it combines the advantages of a sailing boat and the comfort of a motorboat. And that's so amazing that you can go with the power of the sun, power of nature, and the same power can be used to cook spaghetti and to cool down a beer.
Well, and also sailboats are, I mean, they're just like the living spaces is smaller. It's a little bit more awkward. Catamarans are really perfect for living aboard, in my opinion. Let's talk about how your customers are using these yachts. Who is the typical customer for these vessels?
Very frequently, any kind of technical background. People that love green energy, that have an electric car since years, usually early adopters, usually people that are proud saying, I was the first one in my district, or even we have one who was the first one in his country to get the Tesla delivered. We have a client that has 8 Tesla in his homes all around the world. That's the typical customer. Yeah. So more than 50% of our clients never owned a boat before.
That's very interesting.
They are not really close to sailing, but definitely they never would have bought a motorboat because of fuel and many other things. But when they found out that there is an alternative, they said, "This is my boat."
And it makes sense, right? Because there's, what is that? There's all kinds of maintenance that often is required for boats, especially if they have a big engine. Sometimes you have an engine and a wing engine. There's a lot to keep up with. And I could see how all of the advantages of a solar yacht, in addition to a lower maintenance program, would be very attractive to people who have never owned a boat before.
We virtually eliminated those components that caused trouble in the past 20 or 30 years before we started, because I've spent a lot of time on my own boats. In total, it was 16 years net within 40 years. In 40 years, 16 years net. During this time, most of the time, I was living on sailing boats, obviously, until I found out that this cannot be the best solution. Yeah, a sailing boat is okay, it's a good solution, but it is not matching the needs of modern people, of people that are accustomed to a certain amount of comfort. The people had a higher demand for comfort, for luxury. This was simply not common 40 years ago. I remember my first, I don't know how many cars I had without aircon. Today, nobody can imagine driving a car without an aircon. The same at home, the same on the boat. So people are accustomed to a certain amount of comfort, and they want it at home and they want it on the boat as well. And for that reason, we started to develop something that can deliver this kind of comfort, but without running a generator. Because a generator is delivering energy, but is also pretty noisy and expensive. If you calculate that a generator is running 24/7, and this must be the case if you want to run the aircon on a conventionally powered boat, then we are talking about 1 or 2 gallons per hour, not too big boat, 60, 70, 80 feet. And we are between 1 and 2 gallons per hour. And that by 24, then we are at, depending on 25, 30, 35 gallons per day. In the US, it's somewhat kind of affordable, yeah. But if you cruise in Europe, where the gallon is about €8, $9, and that sums up pretty quickly, and also the noise. So we eliminated it simply, and we don't need it. If we run the generator 2-3 hours per week, that's already a lot.
Speaking of comfortability, what does the interior design of these silent yachts look like? What can people expect when they walk into the vessel?
Lot of space. Our salon has about, on the smallest boat, has about 40 square meters, which is, I think, a bit more than 400 square feet. And also the cabins are pretty spacious for a boat of that size, of course. And we insulate our boats thermally. We try to reduce the consumption for aircon or heating, depending on where you're using your boat. Also to avoid direct sun into the boat. The boat is very bright inside. We have big windows, big. So we want to look outside. We don't want to look at the sky. We want to look at the sea. And that's the way how we build and design our boats. Also in the salon, we have huge windows, really huge. Other brands do inclined windows that make a boat look fast. We don't need to look fast. It's not the purpose of the boat. The purpose is to enjoy the boat, enjoy the space, enjoy the comfort, and live on the boat. This is what the people love to do on our boats, and especially enjoy the comfort of big fridges, freezers, aircon, and all the stuff without running a generator.
It doesn't sound like you're compromising much on your living experience on one of your yachts at all.
We don't need to.
Sometimes when people think about sustainable living, they think that they're going to have to give up something. And what I love about what you all have done here is that you're gaining more by being on a solar powered yacht.
Whatever you do, it's always somehow connected to a trade-off. Yeah, always. On a sailing boat, it's the same. If you start the diesel, you can drive faster, but if you want to use your sails, then you have to suffer. Yeah. With a diesel-powered boat, with a motorboat, you also have some trade-offs. Everywhere you sit in the fumes. If you're sitting in the aft cockpit, if you're driving slowly, you get all these turbulences, and you have all the blue smoke all around you. Also a trade-off. Our boats have some trade-offs, but I think I'm absolutely convinced, because I'm cruising with our boats since long time now, as you can imagine, since 2009. We have way less trade-offs than any other boat, because we can go faster, we can go slow, we do not need to run a diesel motor, and we have all comfort all the time.
And you don't have an engine room either. So I'm wondering, did you completely design your own hulls, or are you just reusing existing catamaran hulls, but you're using the engine room space differently? How does that work?
It doesn't work with a standard catamaran. And this is probably the reason why we are still the only one building really self-sufficient boats. But we designed the boats starting with a white sheet of paper, because it is not smart to use an existing sailing or motorboat hull and deck, and especially superstructure, and to fix some solar panels somewhere. And as you do not have enough space on the roof, because it has never been designed for that, you put the panels on the sides vertically. You can make even a nice advertisement with that by saying you have a lot of kilowatt peak on your boat. But in the end, you do not produce with kilowatt peak. You produce with the angle and the efficiency of the panels, the angle to the sun and the efficiency. So what counts for the user is not the kilowatt peak, it is the kilowatt hours that can be used to recharge the batteries or to use it on the boat for the propulsion and for the household appliances. So the big difference is we are not world champion in kilowatt peak on the roof. There are others that claim to have more, but we are definitely by far world champion in produced amount of power per day.
Oh, speaking of the types of equipment that you're using, what type of battery chemistry are you utilizing in these yachts?
We used to use for many years the NMC, nickel, mangan, cobalt. This is very good technology, safe technology, high power. In the meantime, ferrum oxide, The LFPs are as good as the others, and they are even safer. So they no risk of a fire on these batteries, and they deliver in the meantime the same power. That means the same power per kilogram, or power density is the correct term. So for that reason, we use those in the meantime.
So you also designed a super yacht recently. And I wanted to ask you, was there anything different that you did fundamentally on the super yacht, this really large vessel, compared to how you designed the smaller 62?
Not really, honestly. The propulsion system is almost identical. Of course, everything is a little bit bigger and a little bit more. So this client wanted more power, especially regarding generators. He wanted more redundancy. Yeah, let's call it like that. Because he said if one generator is not working and the second one needs to be serviced, I want to have another one that can take over. And I also want to be able to run two or three generators at a time. So I want to have a system that is really, really safe, absolutely safe, so that I can go even at higher speeds if one generator is not working. And so we set up this system as a really, really safe and redundant system. And it's still very versatile, very energy efficient, and I think it's a good system. It's the maintenance is for sure, way, 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 way cheaper than on any other boat. Because if you have on a vessel of that size, you would have 2 times 3,000, 2 times 5,000 horsepower minimum, maybe even 4 diesel engines for propulsion, 4 times 1,500, for example. And you would have for sure minimum 2 big generators and 2 smaller generators. So you would have minimum 2 or 3 engineers that are simply making service every day. Every day they make a service. You know that the service interval on the most of the generators is about 150 hours. A week has more than 150 hours. That means you make a service every week.
And then you're saving on salaries too if you don't have to have so many engineers on a big super yacht. Would you have a smaller crew?
Yeah, definitely. You can save at least 2 to 3 people on a boat of this size that otherwise would more or less spend their life in the engine room. We don't need them, and in fact, the engine room is not a typical engine room as you would expect it. It's just under the floorboards. It's an electric motor. Doesn't make any noise. Nothing. No isolation necessary, no firewall, or I don't know.
No headphones to wear and yell at each other across the room.
Yeah, yeah, simply not required. Actually, they are under the bed sometimes in the aft cabins. They are under the bed, but you don't see them, you don't hear them. No vibrations, nothing. You doesn't disturb you.
Silent Yachts, you're the pioneer of solar powered yachting. There's a couple of other companies out there doing slightly similar, slightly different things, but that's still only a fraction of the whole industry. What have you noticed about the yachting and boating industry in general in terms of their appetite for what we're terming the energy transition, moving away from fossil fueled or internal combustion engines to basically electric powertrains?
I think it's obvious that there is a transition now from fuel-based propulsion systems in cars to electric, at least hybrid. It's clear. It cannot be stopped anymore. Diesel and gas motors will maybe not really disappear, but they will have a much smaller portion of the market than the electric ones in the future. That's for sure. And believe me, people that get to their boat with their electric car and step out from the electric car and go on their power boat will not accept anymore in the future that they are forced to start two huge diesel engines and be full of this smoke in the cockpit. they simply won't like it anymore.
So what's your vision for the recreational maritime industry, the yachting world, I should say? So 5 to 10 years out, what's your prediction in terms of what we could expect to see out there in the world?
I think we will see way more competition. Definitely, there will be more brands coming up doing it. Not all to the same extent. Some will have, like with the cars, some will have mild hybrid. That means small battery, solar array, few solar panels, electric motors, but a generator that has to be used every day for 2, 3, 4 hours. And there will be some that are probably close to us. I hope we will stay alone with our efficiency, that we see it really as a challenge not to start a generator at all. This is our challenge, not only to reduce the engine hours, not to start it at all.
We talked about who your customers were, and the typical customer type was a techie, someone who's maybe an early adopter. How many of these yachts have you sold or do you have on order? What do you expect the volume to be in the next few years?
So we have sold in total more than 50 boats. We have delivered 23 so far, and all the rest is currently on order. I'm working right now on 15 boats, and we have all the others on the waiting list, and they will be started soon.
How many can you build at one time? 15? Is that the capacity of your facility?
So we have a big, huge shed for the plastic works, GRP, glass reinforced plastic. And we have another very big shed for the assembly of the plastic parts as well as of the all the technical equipment and the furniture. And we are usually working on 4 to 6 boats at a time in the assembly shed. But at the same time, of course, in the production of the GRP parts, we are working on minimum the same amount.
The electric tender that you launched recently. Tell us a little bit about that and how that works with the yachts that you've developed.
Yeah, we thought it might be good to offer a tender as well that matches the design of the yacht as well. So far, all our clients ordered one, which is good, but we would be happy to sell it also to people that do not yet use a silent yacht. So the tenders are pretty fast. We have different models of drivetrains. Usually we install a 40 kilowatt jet motor. Most of them are 4 meters long, pretty lightweight. We work with carbon pre-preg. It's the most expensive but the lightest material you can get. And by doing it that way, we really save a lot of weight, which makes our boat pretty fast and quite unique in handling. So I'm very proud of the boat. We do not use floats on the sides. We have rubber foam, thick foam panels on the sides to protect the boat. And this makes the boat not only lighter, but we have more space inside, which is pretty unique. On the aft bench, you sit very comfortably, 3 people.
I like that you have this option because it seems like it could be a simple entry into electric boating that people may not have experienced before. And once they have that, they're like, what do I have this big diesel powered boat for? I need an electric one. This is silly. Once you start to go down the electric road, you start to recognize how silly the conventional systems are.
Actually, a lot of people, I'm surprised. Really surprised to see how many people already changed to electric outboard motors for their tender, small one kilowatt, 2 kilowatts, 4 kilowatts. So I think let's say for tenders, the message arrived already. The people understood it makes sense. It's a technology that is reliable. It works if you choose the right brand. Not every brand is the same. But it simply works, and you never again will try to start your motor 50 times. So this is history now. With an electric motor, you just switch it on and you use it. Very, very convenient. Very convenient.
Earthlings, thank you for joining me as I geeked out with Michael about these silent yachts. We'll add some links in the show notes for you where you can go watch several videos and look at the photos of these beautiful vessels. We'll even share a link to that short video about the transatlantic crossing that we talked about. In fact, it's notable as the first production solar-powered yacht to do that crossing. Michael mentioned that that first week they had bad weather, and so they used the generator, but they only used 1,300 liters of diesel, which is roughly 343 gallons, which is pretty good if you consider they traveled 5,500 nautical miles and had an average speed of 6 knots. Our faith in humanity is restored this week by Paolo Fanciulli. He's the Italian fisherman who is credited with creating the Atlantis of Tuscany. And it all started because he went to war with illegal trawling. Beginning in 2002, he, the Tuscan government, and the World Wildlife Fund Italia deployed a strategic formation of 162 underwater cement bollards to completely ruin the expensive deep-sea trawling nets that were used by these illegal fishing outfits. Trawling nets are weighted, and the boats drag them along the seabed to pull up everything, and they keep the fish and they toss everything else. So beyond destroying the habitat, this activity completely decimates the marine food web, which is something he, as a fisherman, depended on. But Paulo didn't stop there. Recently, he helped drop 39 large marble sculptures down to the bottom of the sea. And he moved from bollards to sculptures because he understood that strong actions alone aren't enough to save our seas. He said he understood that the real challenge begins with people's awareness. So he has got this nonprofit now that has been founded out of his efforts, and it's been installing sculptures from around the world by renowned artists, the first 100 of which were carved from marble that was donated from the same quarry that provided Michelangelo with the material for his masterpieces. Leave it to the Italians to use the transformative power of art to bring the world's attention to illegal fishing and stop it on this beautiful blue-green space flower that we call home.